Hi everyone, welcome to Auburn Yoga and Pilates. Again, I'm Jennifer, I am the owner. Today we're going to do a yin and restorative practice. I have a little different camera angle that I'm going to try because we're doing a wall-based practice, so I'm hoping that this works. Okay, so we're going to start in a comfortable seated position. It will likely help lift your hips. So if you want to sit on a pillow or a folded blanket, feel free. You want to relax your shoulders down away from your ears. And you want to try to bring your attention inward. So bringing your attention to your breath, inhaling through your nose, all the air you can fit. And then exhaling slowly out your mouth. And again, inhaling through your nose, all the air you can fit. And exhaling slowly out your mouth. And one more time, inhaling through your nose, all the air you can fit. Exhaling slowly out your mouth. Now try to keep the depth of that breath and change it to a completely nostril breath. So in through the nose and out through the nose. As you inhale, send your chest and your belly away from your spine. Allow that torso to fill up with air. And then exhale, thinking about bringing the chest and the belly back in, letting that air empty out. Try to keep the depth of your breath, but try to create a fluidity to that breath. And then drawing your attention to something that you would like to manifest into your day today. What do you need to bring in? Do you need more patience? More positivity? More coffee? What do you need more of in your day? And then try to start painting a picture of it. Put yourself in a scene where you're more patient. Or drinking more coffee. Whatever it is, and try not to allow your mind to lower the value of what you feel like you need. Don't second guess yourself. Just sort of embrace what your gut is telling you that you really do need more of. And then continuing to add detail to that picture. Where are you? Are there any special sounds associated with where you are? Any special scents? Even more than that, how do you feel? How do you feel when you have what you've said you need? And try to just sit in this space for about 2 minutes, making it more and more realistic. So doing that does involve going beyond seeing it. It involves feeling it. You have to feel like you already have it. You have to feel like the universe has already gifted you what you asked for. And just sitting in that space. And then deepening your breath, bringing yourself back into the room and switching the cross of your legs, circling your spine. So we're going to use the wall tonight. So you want to make sure that you have a wall where you have a little bit of space. You'll only be using the wall approximately to hip height. So if you do have something over that, it's okay, but under that might be problematic. Switch direction. Primarily a hip opening, focus. And then holding it here and bringing it to a wall. So you want to bring the back of your hips as close to the intersection of the floor and the wall as you can. So if you don't have carpeting, you may want to put a mat or something else underneath. And you'll find that it'll likely take a little bit of maneuvering. So the first pose that we're going to do is literally simply legs against the wall. So this is a restorative pose. So it is the hopes that it literally brings you restoration. This pose is wonderful if you feel fatigued, low energy. It should give you a little bit of a boost. It should feel soothing to the legs because we are basically mixing things up. if you think about it, we're normally standing or seated, and our feet are at the bottom. Here, we've reorganized ourselves and our feet are at the top. So if you have tired feet, tired legs, this is wonderful to do. Now, while these poses like this one are energy producing, they are also calming at the same time, which sometimes you think that those are mutually exclusive things, but they're not. It can infuse you with sort of a positive energy boost, while still calming your overall central nervous system, which, especially these days, or any time, people feel is a good thing, positive thing. Your palms are upward facing, and that's just to facilitate the opening of the chest. Of course, if there's a reason not to put them upward facing, you don't have to. But we spend a lot of our time inadvertently rolling our shoulders forward. Maybe we're at a steering wheel, or we're at a computer, or maybe, just sitting on the sofa watching Netflix. Well, this doesn't pull the shoulders way back. It does put those shoulders in more of a natural, neutral alignment. And it may feel like your chest is more open than it actually is. But notice your breath. Is your breath any different than it normally is? Again, sometimes with our shoulders forward, inadvertently, we're cutting off a little bit of the capacity or the depth of our breath. Notice how just keeping your shoulders in that fairly neutral alignment can most likely allow you to take a fuller, deeper breath. And now we're just going to change this a little. We're going to allow those legs to drop out to the sides. So you don't want to force them, but you do want to allow gravity to take over. So if you're tight through your inner thighs, this one may be a bit of a struggle. And what you can do, if it's too much, you could put blocks or pillows right under your outer hip, and that would help support your leg. Otherwise, you're letting gravity take over. So even though we find stillness in these poses, as those of you who have been doing this regularly know, yin and restorative is a very still practice in general. But you're still allowing micro movements. You're allowing yourself to find more space in the pose. Hopefully, as you settle in, you're finding like, oh, I can release, I can relax just a little bit more. And it's not really a measurable movement. If someone, took a ruler or something and So where your feet started and where your feet ended, it may not really be a significant difference, but you feel a significant difference. Those millimeter or centimeter movements change the way that it feels. And again, because of that whole idea of having your feet higher than the rest of your body, it should ideally be calming to the central nervous system. So the hope is that after this practice, you feel grounded and you feel calm. And then of course, you know, those additional benefits of lengthening and stretching that come with a lot of the poses that we'll do. And then taking those legs back up slowly, always slowly, because the goal was that you got to a really deep place in that last position. So you don't want to shock yourself by coming out of it. Allow yourself to move gradually. Now we're going to come into a butterfly against the wall. So you're going to bring those feet together. Now, I can do something at the wall that I'm unable to do at the floor. And that is to open your feet up like a book so that while your pinky toes are together, the big toe side of your foot is not. Now, you can gently press against your inner leg to bring more external rotation into the legs if you'd like. Again, you do not have to force it. The other thing is sometimes when we're doing this on the floor, we focus on bringing our feet a little further away from our pelvis, and sometimes we focus on bringing our heels closer to our pelvis. This obviously here, because we've got gravity assisting us, is a time when we want to focus on bringing our heels closer to our pelvis. So this is likely to give you a surprisingly intense stretch through your hips and thighs. If it's too much, ease out of it. And of course, any time that your body says, you know, this does not feel quite right, it's a little too much for me, you can come out of this. You can always come back in. bringing those knees toward the midline, lengthening those legs again. Now, if you have really tight hips, you're going to need to take your hips away from the wall. I have pretty tight hips, so I'm likely going to do that, but I'm going to see how it goes because luckily you can always adjust. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our right leg and cross it over in that typical figure 4 stretch that we often do in yoga. Now you want to flex that inside foot. You want to make sure that your foot is resting on that flat spot just above your ankle. You don't want to sickle your foot in any way. And then from here, you're going to bend the upper leg. So going to I have pretty tight hips. This is as far as I can go. So many people can take that foot further down the wall and bring this ankle in closer to their chest. I am not one of those people. You want to find a deep stretch through your hip, through your outer thigh. Now, the knee of the longer leg, which is that leg that's still in contact with the wall, that knee stays on a direct track back toward that shoulder. What happens sometimes is, and see, I'm going to say cheat, and bring my knee toward my belly button, and that will make it look like you went deeper into the pose, but in actuality, you're not more deeply into the pose. It's much better to try to keep that knee on track with that shoulder and just go to where you go. Now, if it's all way too intense, that's where you can pull your hips away from the wall. Give yourself some space between the wall and your hips. It literally does that. Gives you more space in the pose, makes it a little less intense. And even though I don't look like I've gone too far, I'm very happy here and I'm getting a very deep and beneficial stretch. So I'm just going to stay here. Some people like to gently encourage the inside leg into a little bit more external rotation, never force. But if you want to gently encourage, you can, or you may be, perfectly satisfied with where you are. Let your outer hip and thigh tell you if you should be trying to increase the intensity, or if you should leave it where it is, or even if you need to take it up and ease it out a little bit. Sometimes we tense up or we doubt ourselves and we don't go quite as deep as we could. But on the other hand, sometimes we're overly enthusiastic and we do go a little further than we should. And you want to try to avoid that. lengthening the leg that's still in contact with the wall and lengthening that leg. So you may need to sort of windshield wiper those legs back and forth. And then switching sides. Now, you'll likely find that there is a shocking difference between the two sides. If you do a lot of driving, your right hip may be tighter than your left. That gas pedal to brake motion that we do is often tightening for the hip. But as most of you know, we focus on hip openers so much in yoga because of the benefits that they have, not only to the hips themselves, but to the knees and the back. It's all connected. So if your hips are tight, it may be causing not just a discomfort or an ache in your hips, but maybe a discomfort or an ache in your low back or your knees. So really trying to stretch those hips as much as possible. And just trying to think about those same things as the other side. So because of my tight hips, this foot, it was flexed, but it wasn't truly flexed. So I had to bring those toes back a little bit more toward the knee. And then trying to keep the knee of the leg that's touching the wall on track so that it's coming straight back toward the shoulder. And isn't it funny, if you were simply looking at this, like if you were scrolling through Facebook and you caught a snapshot of this pose, you'd probably think that there wasn't much to it. But when you're actually in the pose, you realize how deep you can stretch through that hip and outer thigh, using the wall as a prop. So in the interest of keeping the classes diverse and varied, so that neither your mind nor your body gets bored, try to mix it up a little today, using the wall a little bit more than we have in the past. And since this camera angle seems to be working out okay, we could likely use the wall for one of our flow sequences at some point. lengthening that leg. And again, maybe windshield wiper those legs. If you feel like you need to balance back out. Now this time we're going to come into it's a variation of happy baby. It's almost like a deep squat that we would do on the floor, but doing it at the wall. So taking those feet a little wider than your hips. Bringing both feet to the wall. And holding this, again, it's the equivalent of a low squat position. So we're doing a low squat in a typical, standing to low squat transition may not be accessible to you. Hopefully this is. So stretching your groin, stretching your hips. Who knew we could do so many poses at the wall, right? And just like you could drop your hips a little bit more if you were in a traditional low squat, you can adjust the placement of your feet on the wall higher or lower. You can also adjust your distance between your hips and the wall. My hips are still fairly close to the wall. I could modify this by bringing them further away if I wanted. And maybe you will be happy to hear that our next pose is not going to be a hip opener because we have spent just about half an hour in a variety of hip openers. So your hips are very thankful, but they are ready to share the benefits with another body part. And then slowly lengthening those legs. And again, you may want to externally, internally rotate, just shaking them out. Now, even if your hips are still relatively close to the wall, you may find that you end up needing to or wanting to move them away for a variety of reasons. You're going to take those arms out to the side and you're going to try to keep your shoulders grounded. You're going to allow those legs to drop over to the right for a supine twist. So, I know I've been saying it through most of these poses, but the wall is just like any other prop that we use. And we use them oftentimes to help make the pose accessible, but then to also change the dynamics of the pose a little bit. So in this case, this supine twist, chances are your knees are maybe a little closer to your chest than you would normally place them. Now, for me, I cannot twist so much that I can comfortably bring that knee down, at least initially. So I've got a little bit of a pop, a little bit of space between these knees. That's okay. Maybe your feet or your knee is a little higher up the wall. Maybe you put a pillow underneath your lower leg so that you don't have to go quite as far in the twist. Again, play with these positions and see where you feel like you're getting the most benefit. So obviously twists are great for the waist. They're also supposed to stimulate circulation to the internal organs. And then you get the additional benefit here of a chest opening. Now, if you can, you may be able to look away from your legs. I'm looking toward my legs in this one because I'm trying to, occasionally glance at the camera so you're not just looking at the side or the back with my head the whole time. So continuing to ease your way into the twist, you may find that once you're here a little while, at first, I felt like it was going to be too strong if I dropped that upper knee. But now that we've been here for a little while, I feel like it's accessible for me to drop it. And then slowly walking those legs back up one at a time. I don't know about you, but that was a deep twist for me. And then you're going to try the same thing on the other side. So keeping those shoulders down, keeping those arms out to the side. And you may find subtle differences from side to side. It's very common. We are not completely balanced creatures. I am finding that I need to keep that distance between my legs on this side. And depending on how much space you feel like you need, maybe just allowing that upper leg to sort of hang there is not comfortable. If you find you're tensing in the pose, you want to try to avoid that. So maybe you take a pillow or a folded blanket and you place it between your legs, and that adds some comfort. So just a little longer here in this twist. Try to breathe into those places where you're feeling resistance. See if that helps you to find any additional space. And then slowly bringing those legs up. And believe it or not, we're finally mostly pressing away from the wall. Coming into a place for final relaxation. Now, you can simply push yourself completely away from the wall. Or, oftentimes people find that they enjoy placing the bottom of their feet against the wall. So you press yourself further away, but it's like you're energetically grounding yourself in a way. This just changes the energy flow a little bit because you've got that connection with the wall, yet your feet are still wider than your hips and they're still falling out to the side, just as though they would in a normal final relaxation. And because in a way you're grounding that energy through your feet, you may want to ground the energy through your hips and put a blanket or a larger pillow, something that has a little bit of weight, but nothing too heavy. And you're trying to completely relax in this position. You may or may not be able to notice now, but do your hips and your thighs feel any differently? It may take, until you sit down or stand up to notice. But many of us may already notice some differences. We may feel a little lighter in our hips, a little, I don't know if looser is the right word, but in a positive way. Allowing your arms and your legs to be heavy. So that as you exhale, you're completely releasing any tightness that you may be holding on to. Relaxing fingers and wrists. Relaxing your jaw. Smoothing the creases in your face. And then deepening your breath, beginning to wiggle your fingers and your toes. Moving your feet away from the wall, grounding your feet. Rolling over to your side and eventually coming back to a seated position. Lifting up through the top of your head, maybe moving through a few cat and cows. In this seated position, moving from flexion into extension. And holding it nice and tall, inhale those arms up. Exhale those hands to heart center. The light within me salutes the light within you. Namaste. Thank you for joining us. Sarah will be doing flow yoga tomorrow night at 6 on Tuesday. So feel free to tune in virtually and please comment and share if you enjoyed this. And remember that you can also view these videos on our YouTube page, Auburn Yoga and Pilates. You can just subscribe and you'll get notified when they come up. Take care.